I don't know. Okay.
Okay. Anyways,
I never thought about it this way, to be honest.
Thank you. Thanks for this.
Okay.
Thanks, Andrea. Haoqian?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Welcome to F3B, which stands for Flash Freezing Flash Boy. It's a low overhead blockchain architecture with per transaction front-running protection. I'm Haoqian, and this is a joint work with Louis-Henri, Ziyan, Mahsa, Vero, and Professor Bryan. We are all from EPFL in Switzerland. This is today's outline. So I will first talk about front-running in traditional exchange, then change to the front-running issue in blockchain. Then I will propose our solution, Flash Freezing Flash Boy, or F3B. And then introduce one of its unique feature, which is per transaction protection. And finally, I will introduce some experimental result. So let's say how the front running works in traditional exchange. So suppose customers want to buy some large amount of shares for a company. And then the customers will place his order to a broker. Then this broker will place his customers customer's order into an exchange. Suppose this order is big enough that that will increase the underlying price of the stock. Then actually a broker here can have some strategy to gain some unfair profit. For example, the broker can insert a small order of the same stock for himself, and then place a customer's order. And when the price of the share goes up, then the broker can sell those shares again, so a broker can gain some profit through this front-running attack. So we can define front-running in traditional exchange as a practice of entering into a trade to capitalize on advanced non-public knowledge of a large pending transaction that will influence the price of the underlying security, and it's a prohibited practice by most of the countries. In blockchain, in fact, we have a very similar structure. So instead of a broker, now we have a miner or validator in the middle who helps to place customers' transaction into the blockchain. And similarly, this middleman can do some front-running attack. For example, the miner can do a displacement attack. So the miner can replace customer's transaction to his own transaction, or the miner can insert his transaction before and after the customer's transaction, similar to the example before. Or even the miner can completely ignore the customer's transaction, so the customer transaction will never get into the blockchain. Similarly, we can define the front-running attacking blockchain as a practice where an entity benefits from early access to some pending transaction. However, unlike traditional exchange, there is no regulation about it. So we must rely on technology to mitigate it. And it's, in fact, a very big issue in the blockchain world. One estimation shows that during the peak time of the crypto, it causes a loss of $280 million each month worldwide. So how can we mitigate it? Well, a simple stratman we can use commit and review by user. So user first to publish a commit transaction which contains no sensitive information. And after this commit transaction is finalized by the blockchain, the user can publish second transaction, which contains the sensitive value, and also the hash of the value equals to the previous commitment. So in this, although this simple strawman can mitigate front running in some degree, it has two major drawbacks. The first one is it requires two transactions, so you will have a double latency. And the second is that the suppression attack is still possible. So if the miner see that the value is not good for him, the miner still can choose to completely ignore the second transaction. So before introducing my solution, let's first review how transaction finality works in blockchain in general. So when miner forms a block, it can immediately execute the transaction in the blocks. But when it comes to the finality time, usually the blockchain needs to wait some block confirmations. For example, the Bitcoin will require 6 block confirmation, and the Ethereum needs to wait 2 epochs, which is 64 block confirmations. So the actual finality time for a transaction it's after m blocks confirmations, and it's so on and so forth for all the blocks and all the transactions. So now let's say F3B's architecture. So instead of the plain text, now all the transactions are encrypted. So the sender will send the transaction. Encrypted transaction to the consensus group, and now the consensus group cannot execute it because it's encrypted. But the consensus group will simply store it, and then there is a different entity called Secret Management Committee will read this encrypted transaction from the consensus group, and then to prepare the decryption shares. And once this encrypted transaction is finalized in the blockchain, then this Secret Management Committee will release its decryption shares. And then the consensus group can reconstruct the key so that they can decrypt and finally execute the transaction. I want to emphasize that although in this presentation, the Secret Management Committee and the consensus group are totally separate, but in practice it could be consists of the same set of server. We just ask consensus group to do one more job to prepare the shares and release the shares. Now we can see the timeline of the F3B. So now all the transactions are encrypted, so the consensus group cannot execute it. However, after M block confirmation, then the Secret Management Committee will release the decryption shares so that the consensus group can decrypt the transaction and execute it. So now you can see that although the execution time is delayed by M block confirmations, but actual transaction finality time is quite similar. It's still after M block confirmations. And it's the same for all other block and transactions. So, one unique feature of F3B is that it deploys, it uses per transaction encryption rather than per block encryption. So in order to understand the importance of per transaction encryption, so now we can first see how the per block encryption works. So in per block encryption, the user will choose a future block. Then the user will derive a key from this future block by its block height, by perhaps using the identity-based encryption. Then once get this block key, then the user can use this block key to encrypt its transaction. So the drawbacks here is that all those transactions can only goes into this block. right? So if somehow the transaction failed to be included into this specific block, then we will have a problem, right? Because if it failed to be included in this block, then the key will still reviewed, then the pending transaction will be seen. So this could happen during the network congestion, for example, during the crypto kitty mania, or it could due to a deliberated DOS attack that miner can just deliberately mine an empty block so that all the transaction will be reviewed. So this is, in fact, a strategy deployed by Fireblocks and Shutter. So instead, F3B use so-called pro-transaction protection. So instead of driving a block key, now all the transaction has its own encryption key. So each transaction has its own key to encrypt, so that the transaction, any transaction can be included into the any blocks, and we ensure that all the pending transaction will be remain confidential, regardless of network congestion or the DOS attack. So now we can reason how does F3B mitigate a front-running attack. So let's review the front-running definition one more time. So front-running is a practice when the entity benefits from early access to some pending transaction, and we can reason it from the definition. So now the transactions are encrypted before their finality, then the attacker cannot benefit from those pending transactions. We plugged two crypto schemes into the F3B, namely TDH2 and the PVSS, each of its own trade-offs. For example, in TDH2, it only needs to run the DKG, distributed key generation per epoch, but the membership of a secret management committee is fixed per epoch. And it can achieve a constant length of the cyber attacks. Well, for the PVSS, although each time that the user can choose the secret management committee, membership of the secret management committee, but the user needs to prepare shares per transaction, and also the ciphertext length grows linearly with the size of the committee. So now let's see some experiment results. So for Ethereum, now after the merge, the block time is still is fixed at 12 seconds, and the block needs 2 epochs to confirm. That's 64 blocks. So it's transferred to 768 seconds. And to consider the strawman, which needs 2 transactions, that means double the latency overhead. With the F3B, we tested with 128 nodes. Our latency overhead is around 200 milliseconds, which transfer to 0.0026 or 7% of the latency overhead. We also test the throughput. So in comparison, Ethereum achieves around 15 transactions per second, and we achieve around 250 transactions per second for both crypto schemes. Because of the batching, the latency also increases to around 6 seconds, which transfer to 0.74 or 77% of the latency overhead in Ethereum. In conclusion, so front running is a significant problem in DeFi, and we present a solution, F3B, which can mitigate front running attack. It adopts per transaction protection, which we believe is necessary to mitigate front running attack, and also it achieves low latency overhead, as we showed in our experimental results. However, it will require the modification of the execution layer if existing blockchain want to deploy it. So if you want to know more, you can scan this QR code for the full paper. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Haoqian. Do we have any questions?
Sure.
Well, I have a question, but we can take it offline. Let's get to the next.
You can go because it's going to take me a couple minutes.
Why would you, I mean, have you thought about thinking of this as a roll-up? I'm curious to know why you would want to change the execution logic.
Well, I think the architecture can definitely apply to roll up, but I think the layer one also needs some solution for that, right? So I think for the future work, we can consider roll up as well.
No, I'm wondering if the security had anything, the secret management committee, were there any trust assumptions associated?
Oh, yes, so we need to need half of the honest nodes.
Oh, I see. So you have separate.
Yeah, which more or less consistent with BFT consensus. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.